Tear up the board, push the demons beneath. Dream unravel the void to protect the weak. Seek out shelter in the words of rage. But the chaos is live together monsters speak. We will find you. There is no shelter.
This may be different than what you're used to, because I like to think of our show as the puff piece.
We're fluffy.
We're here to humanize the candidate, perhaps. Show that he's a real guy, and we're going to have a good time in Ancapistan.
There we go.
Yeah, that might be hard to do with me, but I'll do my best to come across as almost human.
Well, I mean, I manage it pretty well.
Nice.
And I'm a lunatic, so. Anyways, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your ride and how you ended up where you ended up here? I should say I'm also a member of Ohio, and are you aware that there was like a planned walkout if you showed up to the convention?
Oh, nice. That's fantastic.
I trust me, the people that I'm involved with in the party, we were all very excited when you agreed to do an interview, because I'm like, oh, I can't wait to post this in all of the Ohio state groups and piss people off. In particular, my county.
Yeah, and you know what it comes down to is this. I mean, it's there's a question of truth and there's a question of falsity. I mean, that's one of the things that I think is the core of the libertarian value system, which is that, yes, we have political views, and yes, we have these specific ideas about this regulation and that tax and all that kind of stuff. But at the core of it, if we can't be honest with each other, if we can't treat each other as adults, which means that we don't sugarcoat the truth, and that to me is one of the biggest issues that I'm seeing in the party right now, is that they believe on one side, they're like, well, we can't treat people like children. We can't tell them whether they can use drugs or whatever. But on the other side, they want us to treat everyone like children by sugarcoating the truth, not telling the full story, all that kind of stuff. And so when I see that, to me...
But Arvin, you're unelectable.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, so is Gary Johnson, like the most, like, you know, Republican moderate type candidate that we've had. And the simple fact is, any person who meets the citizenship requirements and the constitutional age requirements is electable. Electable just means able to be elected. Is it likely that I'm going to be elected by a bunch of PTA soccer moms? Well, actually, you get to talk to some PTA soccer moms about stuff pretty deeply, and you'll find they all have some part where they're just waiting for the opportunity to vent about how much they hate, you know, fill in the blank.
I mean, they voted for grab them by the pussy, so
yeah,
you know that happened. I think that Trump is the best case for you know, your philosophy as far as being elected goes. I will admit that I sometimes disagree with not the stances you take. You're so principled. I sometimes wonder if you're a Fed just put here to like turn people into those people that the FBI and CIA try and turn into radicals that they're going to, you know, show up at the bombing.
I mean, as a radicalized, as you know, I'll be the setup or something like that.
Yeah, you're the guy that's here to shepherd the mice. What is it, the Pied Piper or whatever?
I mean, there is an argument to be had there. I mean, like, it's not literally true, obviously, right? But there is an argument to be had.
I don't want to talk to a Fed. Right. I got enough cops in my life.
Yeah, but I mean, but at a literal level, I mean, here are the things that I want to do with my campaign, right? I want to talk about pardoning all nonviolent criminals, all nonviolent non-criminals, you know, people who didn't steal anything or hurt anybody or commit fraud. I want to pardon all of them. And I also want to encourage individuals to pardon people through jury nullification. And the simple fact is, right now, most people in America simply don't know that jury nullification is what brought freedom of the press to America. Most people don't know that jury nullification is legal because judges go around lying to people and saying that it's not. And so I am here, and it's a fundamental truth, that I am here to turn libertarians and everybody else against the state. I view the state as our enemy. I don't think it's fixable. I don't think it's something that I want to improve. It's something that I want to destroy. If I'm president, I'm just going to gum up the gears so that it can't do anything.
And you're going to start with those things? I mean, they're valiant, but really, when you got the Department of Education right there, that's not the first thing? That's my go-to. Stop the indoctrination camp.
Yeah, no, I'm getting rid of don't get me wrong, I'm getting rid of the entire Department of Education too. But I'm just talking about on the campaign trail.
Right.
I'm saying like pre-election, I want as many people in America to know about jury nullification as currently now know where Aleppo is. Or I want even more people.
I'm going to be honest, I still don't think anyone knows where Aleppo is.
Yeah, because
they like to
why
pretend.
Why should they care?
Yeah, right.
Like why would you care? I mean, it's not our business where Aleppo is. Now, if you're very passionate about spending your own time and resources the way that Teddy Roosevelt did and said, like, I don't like what's going on in this country. Me and my friends are going to go there and fight. Yeah, totally cool. Go ahead and do that. So I don't believe that foreign intervention is inherently wrong. I think mandatory government-run foreign intervention, taxpayer force-funded foreign intervention is always wrong unless it's a direct threat to the United States, which none of this stuff is.
All right, so kind of bringing it back to my zone for just a second here.
All right, let's go. Let's go back.
While you're on that flight from that cesspool on the East Coast to wherever you're traveling to do your campaigning, what's in your earbuds? What gets you amped up to go and talk to people about freedom?
So there's a lot of, I mean, like genre-wise, what will usually get me fired up? There's a few different things: classic rock, rap music for sure. Things that have that deep-seated anti-establishment essence to them. And that part, and that's the piece that we're afraid of right now in our movement, that deep, almost spiritual anti-establishment thing that has driven every major revolution. We're afraid of touching it. Go ahead.
I'm curious. The way you talk, would you consider yourself of the collapsitarian variety, or you don't really worry about that so much? You expecting it or planning it, I guess.
So in this case, it's not something that I think would happen by itself. I think it's a question of individuals either opting out or opting against the state, right? So if you look at the actual successes in our movement, most of those are individual choices, as in individuals opting out of government schools. I mean, that's a $20 billion a year difference. That's far bigger impact than soda taxes or whatever. Individuals opting out of military service, individuals opting out of the police. The police recruitment issues become so desperate that now the police are trying to recruit from other states. There's entire states and cities that have such big shortages, they're going the next state or even two states over to recruit, because people are waking up and saying, listen, I am not joining the enemy. I'm not going to be part of your thing. And so that's that essential idea. People get bent out of shape when I talk about don't join the military because you're doing something damaging and evil and immoral. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. People get bent out of shape when I do that. But that spirit, that's the kind of spirit that fueled the revolutions of, for example, the 1960s. It is the individual personal choices do matter. This is not purely, let's only look at these legislations. There is something deeper that is the heart of our movement, and people are afraid of it.
One of the questions I've always wanted to ask you, because this is, I think, the one place that I don't necessarily understand where you're coming from on. Like I said, your questions or your principles are never in question with me. But from like a sales perspective and an entrepreneurial standpoint, the big thing that you always want to try and do is enter the conversation that the person you're trying to reach is having. And I think oftentimes I'm confused at the particular conversations that you seem to think people are having. Like your principles are great. The point is like when you go on about, like, say, age of consent laws, you're not wrong, but there's nobody outside of our little world here that gives a shit about age of consent laws or is having that conversation. And so you're just automatically interrupting them and not talking about the thing they want to talk about, so they're really not going to pay attention to you anyways. That's the concern that I have. I'm just curious how that works.
I'm glad you asked that, because there's a lot of weird mysticism out there. People are like, is Arvin a child? I'm like, no, obviously not. And
it'd be difficult to be an educator and a child molester.
Yeah, so. I have FBI background checks to do this, to work in education. There's a lot of background checks. I mean, it's just when I see people doing that, I'm like, okay, well, at least I'm winning the argument, because you don't start calling people's names unless you don't have an actual rhetorical leg to stand on. So the question is, what do I bring up and when? So if I'm on RT, if I'm on Fox, am I going to be talking about age of consent? No, because there's no relevance there. It's not relevant to the discussion in any way whatsoever. So the question is, why am I bringing it up internally? And that it's just studying recent history. In 2008, we had two sides. We had this dilemma that shouldn't have been a dilemma, right? We had Dr. Ruwert, one of the best candidates we've ever had. I mean, a world famous author, deep intellectual thinker, great speaker, principled libertarian. I mean, she's somebody who, before debates or whatever, I'll often, ask her a question or something, because she's one of those people who the amount that she knows about this stuff is so many times what I know about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on the other side, we had Bob Barr and Wayne Root, which were realistically some of the worst candidates we've ever had. I mean, both Republican moderates, both people who later went back to endorse Mitt Romney. I mean, it's not. The choice should have been a no-brainer, right?
Why do I keep hearing Mitt Romney? I'm a libertarian, goddammit. Everybody talks about Romney.
Yeah, he just keeps coming up, doesn't he?
He's out there.
He just won't go away.
He really won't go away.
Yeah, and I know I'm contributing to the problem a little bit here by bringing up, but it is important, because what was it? Why did they make this bizarre choice? And it was age of consent. That's what did it. They asked Dr. Ruwert, does she believe that government should be involved in these things? And she said no, and she answered the question deeply. She's not like, no, but it's not important. She said, it is important. It's a deep question. Here's my deep and thorough answer. And they took little bits of it out of context, scared the hell out of the delegates. And they got this stuff all the way into Time magazine. They got quotes from Dr. Ruwert into Time magazine focusing on that specific thing. So I knew that if they were going to do it to her, they were probably going to do it to me too, because all they would have to do is ask. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I don't believe in lying to adults. Yes, sometimes if you're talking to a 3-year-old, you need to lie because they can't understand the truth. So maybe you're not going to explain to a 1-year-old where babies come from. I get that sometimes you sugarcoat the truth or you lie to kids, but you should never sugarcoat the truth or ever lie to an adult. I think it is always morally wrong. So if the delegates had asked me...
The science and the academics on this would probably agree that most 30 and 40-year-olds are probably teenagers anyways at this point. So there's that. But
Interesting point. I guess I hadn't really thought of it like that.
We have that delayed adolescence. I mean, just the word adolescent that never even existed until like the 1900s.
Yeah.
And they're extending it, right? Because an adolescent and a child is not a threat to the state. And that's why, there's this mythology out there that adults can't help themselves from having 55 kids that they can't pay for. So we need to have a welfare state. I mean, that's nonsense. I mean, any adult with the most basic level of self-control and, basic biology can decide to not have 15 kids they can't support.
And this is one thing I had somebody I was in a discussion with the other day that it got a little contentious over this idea. My issue when we talk like that, and it's not that you're not right, but we do face the fact that we literally have a system designed to infantilize people. And you're not wrong about how they're, but in the same, I have difficulty not feeling some modicum of sympathy for people that were literally lied and educated and brainwashed into a position of subservience. And I could sit there and, wax poetic about, they're the rubes and they just need to get with the program. But I'm not sure. Number one, I'm not sure how well that actually operates to do anything useful for people. But I mean, I personally, at a fundamental level, I have difficulty not sympathizing with those people and wanting to try and help them see what I've seen at the very least.
Yeah, and that begins with telling the truth. I mean, and here's the thing: like we're not pulling like short-term street cons on people where we have to change their mind in 5 seconds. These are deep conversations. Some of them are going to take multiple years. I knew that a discussion as complicated as age of consent was going to take at least 2 years. So I brought it up 2 years ahead of time. I mean,
if 2 years is enough for that. Now,
well, maybe it's not enough. It might take 6 years. It's still 2024, right? It's not like...
There you go.
I'm interested personally in that. So we have, where are you at as far as, Ancapistan or like the philosophical idea of it? Are you one that's trying to push the world into our views, or one that's understands that is probably not going to happen in at the very least a reasonable time, and perhaps you're always going to have those people that just simply don't want or can't be free. My big thing is secession. I want everyone to just let me go my own fucking way. That's what that's why the whole seasteading movement's been a big thing for me. We obviously have seen where that's gone so far. Hopefully we can find some way to make that work.
Right. So there's often, if you study a system a lot, you can start to see weak points in it. And so in this particular case, imagine today the U.S. shut off all foreign aid. That's all direct foreign aid, all direct military aid, and all indirect aid through the World Bank and IMF. But here it would be beautiful because we hate welfare, but it's actually this other thing that people forget about. Countries, if they did that, countries would run out of money. They would go bankrupt. And when people go bankrupt, they have to sell off their assets. The number one asset that other countries have is sovereign territory. If countries started selling off sovereign territory, like you remember from history class, like the way the United States bought the Louisiana Purchase, right? Mm-hmm. Or Seward's Folly or the Gadsden Purchase. Imagine that, but being sold to private investors. That can happen by shutting down the least popular U.S. federal program. If we ended foreign aid today, that would happen in 3 or 4 years.
Okay. Now, how do we do that without going to war with Israel?
How would Israel stand a chance against us in a war?
I don't know, man. They got that dome, don't they?
I mean,
can we get a shot off on them?
I mean, I don't think that Israel has any major plans to invade the United States. It strikes me as just from a strictly military perspective, I would probably advise Israel not to do that. From a moral perspective, I would also advise them not to do it because what's the point? Mm-hmm. But from a military perspective, that strikes me as insane.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've been interviewed so many times about is there Russian collusion going on, Russian involvement?
People actually ask that question.
All the time.
Pay attention?
And then sometimes I'm asked on RT, so it makes a little bit more sense there. But sometimes I'm asked in other places where it just and to me, I'm like, if you want to know what foreign involvement in U.S. elections look like, you look at AIPAC, you look at the way that Israel influences American elections. This is not saying anything that I hate Israel, think that Israel needs to be wiped off the map or anything. I don't.
To me, that's not even the most insidious stuff. As a person who comes from education, dude, the fact that there's people that literally have laws enacted. Obviously, they're being brought up on constitutional grounds currently, trying to say that you can't be an educator if you're involved in if you're involved in not supporting Israel. Like, we have laws in our books about what we can and can't say about another country. That's even worse than the lobbying efforts and like what happens in Capitol Hill. That's how it's one thing I can see like them being a part of factoring into like the national conversation and getting in with the national government. But it's odd to me that like there's individual states that's a problem in.
No,
in
actually,
particular, Texas is what's really blowing my mind. Jesus,
yeah, I've seen that, and see that is. I mean, I don't know what at that point you're just dealing with basic freedom of speech, but if you want to look and see what it looks like when foreign countries meddle in U.S. elections, that's what it looks like, and you see the goal and the end game. I mean,
yeah,
it's this such a surreal thing when people are talking about Russian, involvement in U.S. elections and skipping over the well-publicized, well-documented, openly known Israeli involvement in U.S. elections. That to me just. It just leaves me befuddled as to what's happening over here. Why are we pretending to ignore the obvious? I feel like I'm in that book, The Emperor's New Clothes or something.
So we have we got our resident minority woman over here. What are your thoughts with Arvin?
Oh, well, no, I was listening to the conversation because I grew up in Texas. It's the Bible Belt, and Israel's just you protect it because Bible. That's where all the stuff happened.
We need that end game. We need the war.
I guess that we want to be on the right side, I think, is the idea. I'm not real sure exactly.
Yeah,
but
it is one of the more puzzling things, and I'm not an expert in theology by any means, but it is weird that a lot of evangelical Christians have decided to prove their hardcore Christianity by their support of Israel. And that to me seems a little puzzling, just kind of based on the stories of the Bible.
I'm not saying that who's done some comparative religious study, it has nothing to do with religion and everything to do with politics.
Yeah, I mean the politics I can kind of see, but the I'm so Christian that I support Israel. Like, I mean, did you mean the Vatican? Like, what are you talking about? In what imaginary world is Israel a Christian country? I mean, it clearly isn't. That's like the whole point of Israel.
Maybe they're just trying to, make up for the whole Jesus was a Jew and that whole thing.
Yes.
I don't know.
I'm not a JQ person. That's all the talking Israel I need to have. But no, what I was saying, like if you're a woman of color here, what do you have to ask Arvin? Like if you were to think about it, he's talking about age of consent. Does that bother you personally?
I mean, we've had that conversation plenty of times because, obviously as a parent with a daughter, that there's a knee-jerk reaction, and then there's the, reaction based on actual
I'm a terrible human being,
principles
folks.
and
I
actual,
do not have a knee-jerk reaction to this whatsoever.
ideas that
I'm going to be honest,
to be true. So
everyone makes out like Arvin like he's just this. I mean, he says things that like I've never heard you say anything that really makes me bat an eyelash. So maybe there's something wrong with me, I guess.
Well, no, I've never really.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I get it.
I've never felt like there was some sort of like dog whistle thing happening. I've heard that term used, but I never got that idea. It just always seemed like a conversation we were having about principles.
Oh, so this reminds me of something else. So this may be out of left field.
Okay.
I hear white supremacist fairly often when people refer to you. I don't
get that quite a bit.
Are you white? I mean,
No.
maybe this is just me. You've never struck me as a white person, so it makes that difficult in my mind.
Like, how does that work?
It is weird. I mean, I am Indian, but I look Middle Eastern, right? So I get my decent share of racism. So the idea. I'm like, what is the percentage? What is the end game of me being a white supremacist?
Yeah,
why would I want to do that?
Yeah,
Well,
that doesn't seem like a winning strategy there.
My favorite part, I get called a Nazi a lot because I'm involved with the LP Mises caucus, and one of the things that I get really confused about is like they come at me with all this hate and bigotry, and I'm like I'm a bisexual man married to a fucking black woman with a mixed child, like. What end game is there for me that works out with being a white supremacist? Like, nothing makes any sense.
And it's when people start to, you started to win the argument. The winning the ending of winning an argument is people start to come across, they become converted, they become your missionaries, if you will. And I've certainly been fortunate to have many people who initially disagree with me very strongly become some of my strongest supporters. But the initial phase is where the arguments go out the window and people just start calling you names, especially names that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, why would I want to be a white supremacist? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just boggles the mind.
Politics is funny to me sometimes.
When
it's not
frankly.
utterly devastating and makes me rip my hair out, it's really funny.
Yeah, I don't have energy for any of that stuff. So generally, I'm just like, I want to do my thing over here. I want to let people do their thing over there, as much as we can without people getting hurt.
So I'm not entirely sure. I know that there was a lot of hubbub about you, like if you showed up to the convention here in Ohio, that people were talking about boycotting you and walking out or not showing up to the convention at all, which I thought was super funny. And then I find out that I assumed that this was a reaction to you actually for sure being there. And I was talking to people today, and is that even a for sure thing? People were just reacting to the idea of you maybe being a place sends them into such a tizzy. What is it about you that really riles people up that way?
I go after the sacred cows.
Oh, okay.
What are the sacred cows? What are we going there?
The sacred cows are the belief that we need to worship the military. I don't worship the military. Joining the military is a stupid decision. It's a morally wrong decision, and I don't want more people to do it. And I want the people who have done it to encourage other people not to do it, and to come to terms with the fact that they made a mistake. Listen, I've made plenty of mistakes in life. I mean, you don't go through life and do anything and not make a whole bunch of mistakes. But there's a difference between making a mistake and saying, "Okay, I learned from this mistake. Here's what I'm going to do differently," versus being like, I made a mistake. Now you have to like worship my mistake. And I'm not going to worship your mistake. I'm going to call a mistake a mistake. And so there's that, I go after public school teachers because I think that if you're an educator, your first commitment. I tell this to all of the teachers that work at Vohra that your first commitment as an educator is to the truth. If you can't talk about the truth, if you can't be honest, you can be a guy talking about math, but don't call yourself an educator. Call yourself something else. And if you are a public school teacher, you're aware of what you're doing is wrong, then you are unable to live by the truth, live by your principles. And if you are unaware that what you're doing is wrong, well, you're too stupid to be a teacher. I mean, you also, teaching does require some intelligence as well. So going after people.
I'm sorry. Did you just say being a teacher requires some intelligence?
A real teacher, yeah, a public school teacher.
Well, no, it doesn't. Trust me, I went to an education school. They're all dumb as hell.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have some issues with that education.
I'm gonna be honest. Like, my sister became an educator, and she's got a learning disability. So,
yeah, but that's the nice thing she overcame, and it's like this major triumph story. That's exciting. If it's
I think it's just that's the level at which I think that's the bottom of the barrel that they're scraping to get people that will take that job at this point.
And they want people who care about what they want.
I think
them
you
to care
should have
about.
to be smart to teach kids, but
I think that is what they're going by.
This isn't an indictment of you. I think there are obviously plenty of intelligent people that can go into that job. I simply do not think it's a requirement.
I think to do it well, it's absolutely a requirement. If you look at the entire free market of education, that's what you see. You see a lot of brilliant people in it.
And that's a question I have for you, because I said education. That's if I have a sacred cow, education is my big thing. Even more than the war, because I think the wars don't exist if you stop brainwashing kids. I think that shit will just end naturally. All that wanting to have people stop joining the military, stop schools. It will happen. Nobody wants to get shot.
Yeah.
So,
especially when it gets shot over something stupid. I can understand wanting to protect your family, but wanting to protect some kind of nonsense from somebody in ways where it's gotten so dumb that you'll have the Department of Defense on one side and the CIA on the other side. It's turned into a clown show.
We're homeschoolers ourselves. Now,
nice.
If you had an ideal, do you see an ideal way to educate in our society as it is?
Yeah. In a general sense, using the free market and homeschooling. And the point is, because everybody's different, homeschooling varies so much from one person to another. The free market has so many different educational options. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's just like you don't have like one ideal food. You have the ideal food is the choices. And that's what you need in education.
Like, the thing that I'm super surprised about is that I don't see more like essentially private tutors setting up shop and, getting groups of families together and essentially doing almost like one room schoolhouse style of teaching. Like, if you get 10 families, paying even half of what daycare costs, like, you could easily make more than any school teacher is going to make in a school. It's odd to me that there's not some type of entrepreneurial movement going on with teachers, given how poorly they are treated by schools.
I think there's more of it than there used to be. Yeah.
Yeah, it's starting. There's a lot of like they're called co-ops, but they're what you're describing in areas there's a lot of homeschooling going on. You just need a critical mass, right? You need to have like a certain number of students. And it's tricky because in the high wealth areas like here in DC usually tend to be high fear areas where everybody's like, oh my God, I have to go to the most prestigious school. So tutoring often ends up catering towards like competition, like competitive academics, right?
I'm curious why we even care about that at all anymore now that the SATs are factoring in your race and
right.
economic background as part of the scoring system.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that yesterday.
Well, there's the whole thing
that
of,
to me is wild.
And you're going to take that and get into a school that someone could have possibly just paid a bunch of money to get their kid into anyway. So, you know.
So, I think that people are starting to wake up to the idea that college is just not a good option anymore.
Dads need to wake up to the fact that there are some pretty hot moms that are into homeschooling. So
that's the selling point.
If we can just spread that around, I think we might actually get some more involvement in this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hot co-op moms.
Hot co-op moms. Yeah. You know what they say? Brains is always attractive, right?
It's true.
I mean, that's not what I was noticing, but they're generally if they're choosing that path anyways, and we can let them go that way.
Okay.
So this has been an interesting episode because I made the decision at a certain point that it's going to be a bonus episode for our show.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
So I don't really care what we talk about. I'm just going to talk about all the things I've always wanted to ask Arvin. And
Okay.
all right.
That's how we got off book. I was wondering.
Yeah. And Liz is like, these are not the questions we normally ask people. Why are we doing this? So as an Ohio resident, what do you think you can do for Ohio specifically? What do you think the problems that we need, fixed for us are? Because obviously everyone's looking to you to fix the problems. That's why we have a president in the first place, right? Because we're a bunch of infants that can't take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to make baby feel good?
How are we going to make? So imagine this, right? Imagine right now we have a situation where our government is basically stealing the surpluses of capitalism. Today, it's hard for two parents to provide as much as one parent could 50 years ago, even though today we have better technology, more automation, all the things that make people more productive. So where's it all going? Like, where is all of that going?
2% every year gets siphoned out.
Yeah, it's spent on other things, right? I mean, it's the reason, all the effort that would be going into making you have a better home or better car or whatever, all that labor is being sent over to build aircraft carriers and jets and prisons and all that nonsense. So imagine this. Imagine if you could exchange your labor for somebody else's labor and not have to give a gigantic cut to the government. What you're talking about is you would have more money and things would cost less money. So your purchasing power would be multiplied by a lot. And that's what we should have. I mean, it doesn't make any sense for a more technologically advanced society to have to work harder than a less technologically advanced society.
But that's the thing. You're a more technologically advanced society who happens to be economically illiterate.
In this case, yeah. But that's been forced upon us by, bad education, either government schools or government funded colleges. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, it's not that colleges are so much less statist than schools, nor are they less state dependent than schools. The government spends about as much on college subsidies as they do on secondary education.
Oh, no question. I mean, sorry, I feel like I'm just going to fall down the education economics rabbit hole. I'll stop myself because that never ends. But yeah, how nobody understands that the incentive structure for people to get more money and find more money to support themselves when there's guaranteed money coming in doesn't make any sense to me. How do the people so fucking blind they can't see that?
I think they can see it. I think they just want, when somebody sees somebody getting away with theft.
Dissonance.
Yeah, no, but you have two reactions. Some people are like, "Oh, that guy's getting away with theft. Let me do the same thing." Another person says, "That guy's getting away with theft. Let's stop it." I'm in category 2. I grew up in. You go ahead.
No, so who? That brings up. It's been sitting in my head for a couple minutes now. So who is the Arvin avatar? Who are the people you're speaking to?
Who am I speaking to? I mean, I'm speaking to a part of every person, right? Like, if I wasn't speaking to a part of people, it wouldn't get them so pissed off.
Well, see, but that's the thing. Like, I think you piss off libertarians because it's definitely a part of them. But the bottom line is, I mean, I'm a musician. I spend a lot of time. I got in an argument yesterday because I was on a stupid Facebook post and the person goes, "This is clearly a right-wing troll. No leftist would say this." And I'm like, I have been in those conversations with like musicians under 30. These are not even as crazy as the conversations I've sat there hoping nobody notices I'm in the room listening to. And so I'm going to be honest. I do not think that a large percentage of the population is even remotely capable of resonating with. Like, I don't even think they have the basic self-preservation. I don't even think they're capable of thinking of self-preservation to get to the point where you are on a lot of stuff, unfortunately.
I don't think that's true. And that's the thing, I've met so many people who've gone through these transitions, right? And for some people, a large number of people, it's something that the police did to them or to their family member, or that the state did to them or their family member. And they're just like, what a horrific thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for other people, it's actually different. It's something positive. Maybe it could be as simple as that, they planted some food and they're like, whoa, I can get food out of the earth without the government having, or even society having any involvement. Or, they'll start their own business and all of a sudden they start to realize that they could do so much more if the government wasn't in the way. I mean, those types of things, that's in everybody. If you scratch a bureaucrat deeply enough, there's an entrepreneur there inside. Every bureaucrat in the world, in my opinion, is a frightened entrepreneur. They're just scared, but they don't want to be scared.
Here's
they don't
an idea. I think that we need to have a greeting card like the Libertarian Party sells, and it is a greeting card that you give out to like your relatives' kids, or your nieces and nephews when they get that first job and their first paycheck, and it just has the Libertarian Party logo at the bottom and says, "Enjoy your theft." And points out, tells them specifically where to look at on their pay stub to see exactly where they're being robbed. Because I know that very first paycheck, when I sat there and looked at it, and I just couldn't believe this. Like, seriously, like this is what I get after all that. This is what they get. Where's that? Sorry, it's a
that's huge. I mean, that right there, it's those moments in time where you think, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. Think about how much more hatred there is for the police now than there was, say, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. It's because everybody feels hatred when they get that speeding ticket, and then they turn into something else, but like, oh, it was my fault. I shouldn't have been speeding. And now when you have this, it's almost like a lightweight Me Too movement happening, but for police abuse and just for minor police abuse, speeding tickets and whatnot. People are like, you know what? Yeah, I was violated. I was robbed. I didn't want to think of it in those terms, because the second you say to yourself, not I made a mistake, I was driving too fast, but for no justifiable reason somebody robbed me, the second you admit that to yourself, the second you admit that internally, your life changes, because now you're basically being robbed by an enemy as opposed to disciplined by an authority.
So, amusingly enough, like I always tell people, one of my youngest brother is actually a cop, and God, while it bothers me, I will say there's nothing more cathartic than when there's like some blatant and obvious police abuse that I have to sit there and come up in my Facebook feed, than to be able to just call him and say, "You fucking pig pieces of shit, I fucking hope you all die." It's terrible as a cop, but I enjoy the catharsis.
I hear that.
Because he can't arrest me. He's not even in the same state.
Oh, nice.
He can't do shit.
And so that might never change him, although realistically at some point probably will. But it might never change him.
I think it already is. Like,
yeah.
Other than like there's certain states where, like you said, it's getting harder and harder to find the people to even do that. And people don't understand, like, even within the police forces, there's certain places where they haven't bought into that whole part of the giant apparatus yet. I always tell people very specifically, who always give when they come in to say they're going to come and take your guns, there's no way you can fight the cops. And I watched as the SAFE Act came into place in New York State, and on the western southern tier region, the sheriffs told the state to go fuck themselves. They weren't going to enforce those laws. Like, yeah, we're not doing this. So you do what you're going to do about it. We're not.
When you talk to a lot of people who are trying to recruit, like police recruiters, the two issues that they talk about is, one, people are there's no heroism for the police anymore. They're basically seen more by some people just as an enemy, by other people as a nuisance. But also, sad or whatever enough, one of the big issues is people don't want to get shot. And so the fact that they're doing these insane acts like the SAFE Act, which is just designed to get cops shot, is also more and more making it harder to recruit people because
red flag laws.
No one wants to get shot. Yeah, the red flag laws and nonsense. I mean, that's like, how can we get more cops shot? Oh, here's a way to do it. I mean, it's such a stupid idea. I mean,
do you wonder if that's like there's a deep libertarian coup going on, and they're like, oh, let's just see how bad we can make it and get that shit riled up.
It might be, but this is also human nature. I mean, what we're seeing right now is just like a worldwide playing out of the Stanford prison experiment, where you've basically given some people badges and told them that they need to control the other people who don't want to be controlled, and then the result is, well, this.
Right on. Well, this has actually been a very fantastic conversation. Is there anything you'd like to add while we have you on? Anything you specifically want us to know about? We can let our audience know. Who's your favorite band of all time? Maybe.
Oh, favorite band of all time? Probably Rolling Stones.
Ah, nice choice.
Good band.
Do you have a particular album?
No.
All that matters is brown
I
sugar.
I will say that the song "Painted Black" definitely has a special place for me.
Nice.
It's a race thing.
That's a race thing, of course. But the other thing is now that I've heard about all this from Ohio, I mean, I was honestly a little bit on the fence, but I am definitely. Unless they ban me from the country.
Oh no! I literally started sending screenshots of you agreeing to do this to some of the people that I know, and I'm like, oh, I can't fucking wait to pimp this episode out to the people here.
Oh, you putsters!
Oh, I am.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm an ANCAP. Literally, that is what I live for, is to stir the pot.
Yeah.
Look at you.
And so, I mean, I want to see. I mean, I want to see big changes. And I'll tell you this, if we can stop hiding ourselves, if we can stop from hiding from who we are and embrace the greatness that is the libertarian philosophy, the ANCAP philosophy, we can change the world. I promise we can do it if we can actually be ourselves instead of some moderate version of our enemy.
You know what I think would help? Perhaps not approaching people and saying, hey, your wife's black and a woman. Can we get her into the party? Well, she's fairly apolitical. Oh, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I didn't plan on doing that.
No, you didn't. That's a conversation that I've actually had.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. Like, we have two choices. We can do deep politics, or we can do surface politics. Surface politics, yeah, race, identity, all that kind of stuff.
I think race and identity are just great for comedy, but whatever.
Sure.
To me, we have a lot of politics, but.
I mean, you're no disagreement from me there.
I laugh it off because, like I said, I brought up earlier, as part of the Mises Caucus, like we get called, we're the alt-right pipeline.
Yep.
And
I remember.
Well, and it's funny because, like, so many of the dudes that like are in, the guys in charge, so to speak, like. Half of my know are of different ethnicities that are not white, and if they are white, they're married to somebody who's not white. Like, we're really shitty white supremacists for white supremacists.
We gotta up your white supremacy game.
Yeah. You had one job.
Like, I'm really, really failing at this. I went out and I was like, gonna be Nazi, and then I like big asses. What was I gonna do? It undermined the whole thing. Right on. Any last plugs there, Arvin?
If you want to know, my website is votevohra.com. Nice. And you know what I'm running to, and the welfare state and the income tax.
It'd be beautiful. Here's a question. What would you do with your extra money that is stolen from you every year?
I'd probably spend it on expanding either my current business or additional businesses, or I might just take some time off. I don't know.
I was hoping he was going to say prostitutes, but
it's not the angle he was going for. He was going for create more wealth. Look, for
Arvin is doing the adult thing. I was just thinking prostitutes.
Oh God!
Right.
Right on, Arvin. Well, thank you so much for coming on Sounds Like Liberty, and I look forward to hearing. Hopefully, it's worse than I think it'll be even. Nice. Here in Ohio. You have a good day, boss. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, you too.
Save you from the night impending. Retreat! Cling to your holy word till you're